So the right has gone into meltdown since Labour's landslide win on a smaller share of the vote than what Jeremy Corbyn achieved 5 years ago. Now, with the desolate Conservative Party, that was predictable and inevitable. But soaring Nigel Farage pulled a surprise today by wresting control of his party. That was with the dramatic move of sacking its Deputy Leader Ben Habib, who failed to win a seat in Parliament at last week's vote. That has been an immediately unpopular move because Ben is one of the smartest guys on the British right, and when I spoke to him last week after the result, he seemed intent to remain part of the Reform UK movement. However, there were clearly some splits going on because he was concerned, it looked like, about the party turning into some sort of personality vehicle. Watch. What has to happen for Reform UK to be able to do that?
So, a number of things have to happen. Reform UK comprises a number of individuals, including myself, who've actually never held power. We've been on the sidelines, and we've correctly pointed out, in my view, many of the problems that have beset the United Kingdom, and we've come up with some really first-class ideas on how we solve them. But we now need to develop a team of people. It's got to be broad, it's got to be deep. It cannot rest on one person or a very small number of people. And we've got to have the ability to enact and execute the vision that we have for the United Kingdom. And we've got to develop that through local councillors, local branches, democratise our own party, which at the moment is itself not a democracy, and become, genuinely a serious political party.
So he seemed really serious about being part of that transformation. But this morning, Ben Habib was told by Nigel Farage that things were about to change, and that sparked a new civil war in the party. He was to be replaced as deputy leader by the party's former leader and chairman during the campaign, Richard Tice, who is an MP, of course, for Boston and Skegness. But Ben tweeted, "I have just been informed by Nigel Farage that Richard Tice is taking over as deputy leader of the party. Consequently, I no longer hold that position. I am considering my position more generally in light of this change. I have long held concerns about the control of the party and the decision-making processes. I will reflect on all of this. The key for me is that Reform UK stays true to the promises made to the British people. The movement we have created does not belong to us. It belongs to the people. We are obliged and indebted to the British people." Now, look, the problem is that Nigel wants to shape the party around him. And let's be honest for a second, given there may well be no Reform MP in Parliament without him, it does make sense. Farage is the British Trump, and he wants to run things his way. In many ways, I'm all for that. But the big problem is that if the right is divided, then it doesn't help anyone. Nigel was also heralding the birth of a new political superstar in today's announcement, installing the Muslim millionaire donor Zia Yusuf, a former Tory supporter, into the role of party chairman. Now, there's already been a lot of discussion within the party that he could end up being Nigel's eventual successor, following his breakout performance during the campaign. And this is why he was so good.
So nobody knows better than I the contribution that immigrants can make to Britain. However, when my parents emigrated here in the 1980s, annual net migration to Britain was around 50,000. This meant public services were not overstretched and new arrivals could assimilate comfortably. Last year, that number was 650,000. We have lost control of our borders. We have no coherent immigration policy. And this is impacting all British people, regardless of their race or religion. And there are real consequences to this. To our young people, I say you are being betrayed. You are being robbed of a fair opportunity.
Now, I think he's amazing, but I know some folk, including my next guest, Father Calvin Robinson, are concerned that Mr. Yusuf is not Christian. I have to say, though, I'm blown away by his oratory and by his positioning, which would certainly help to detoxify this ridiculous MSM campaign against reform. But look, what's going on within Reform UK today is child's play. Child's play compared to the all-out civil war engulfing the Conservative Party following that record defeat last week. Two women have emerged as the main contenders to take the leadership with very different approaches to how they want to approach Farage. CCHQ stooge Kemi Badenoch says he has no place in the Tories and rules out any deal, while the bold Suella Braverman wants to return the party to true Conservative values and is very open to a Farage deal. Of course, the wets in the party, like Ian Dale, who should just go and join the Lib Dems, are completely freaking out, insisting that Suella must be stopped and she's some sort of homophobe. The I newspaper has reported she's lost all her mates, and they say, even the gays. Well, not me. Not me. Suella hasn't lost me. I mean, I'm thinking she's the only leadership contender who right now is speaking the truth and is prepared to make some of the bold decisions needed. Meanwhile, Kemi is engaging in personal warfare with a leak from a brutal shadow cabinet meeting, revealing she claims Suella was, wait for it, having a nervous breakdown. Not only completely untrue, but below the belt dirty politics. Trying to shield herself from the blame as usual, Kemi tweeted, "It's a shame our discussions in Shadow Cabinet were leaked yesterday. If there is no private space to discuss our party's challenges, we will never fully address what the electorate told us last week. The views of those outside these meetings matter too, not just backbench MPs, but our party activists, members and friends who lost seats after giving everything to the campaign. In government, we had too much nodding along in the room and arguments outside it. That culture needs to change. We need to be honest with each other in private and united in the direction we take afterwards." But Suella, she wasn't having it. So she retweeted Kemi's post, but she added these words: "I'd be interested in knowing whether Kemi thinks I'm having a very public nervous breakdown. Hashtag honesty, hashtag unity, hashtag we don't leak." Good on her. Good on Superwoman Suella. Look, there's no nervous breakdown in being honest about why Kemi Badenoch's Tories were beaten to a pulp by Labour and Reform UK at the ballot box last week. If MPs decide to pass over Suella yet again, refusing the membership a vote when she is the most popular candidate amongst the grassroots, I do believe many people will quit on the spot and go and join Reform UK. Maybe that isn't a bad thing. What I will say is that it's all to play for. Now, the aforementioned Calvin Robinson is today's outsider. Calvin, so good to have you back. It is all kicking off on the right of British politics, but I really want to start with Reform UK, Calvin, because what do you make of this pretty brutal decision to sack Ben Habib by Nigel Farage after he stayed a very loyal deputy from the Brexit Party days into the Reform days?
Incredibly brutal, and that is the right word. I was in Ben Habib's office not yesterday, the day before, and he was right in that moment writing plans and ideas to help Farage take the party forward. He was very much in favour of democracy. Ben Habib's stance is that the party will only survive if it becomes a party. It cannot be the dictatorship of Nigel Farage. It cannot be at the whims of one man. It has to be a membership where people can join, they can have a say, and it become a movement far larger than a demagogue. And Ben Habib was putting all this forward in a very sensible way. And it's a shame that not only has he been fired, but he had to find out in this way, in that a multimillionaire has just stepped in, dropped a load of cash and been promoted to chairman. Therefore, Richard Tice has been demoted down. Richard Tice doesn't care, from chairman to deputy leader. And therefore, Ben Habib is no longer the deputy leader. And he has to find out, like the rest of us, on social media. It's absolutely astonishing the way Farage is treating his team. But this isn't the first time. Let's not forget, the reason Nigel Farage is an MP right now, along with the 20 years of campaigning he's done, is because in this specific instance, In this country, he said, no, I will not run. No, I will not run. I'm going to America, far more important. I'm going to help with my friend Donald Trump in America. I will not stand for election in the UK. And then Tommy Robinson, Lawrence Fox, Carl Benjamin, and to a lesser degree myself, are part of a rally on the 1st of June. Tens of thousands of British patriots come out and start a movement, a very powerful movement of patriots, of people who say enough is enough with the wokeness, with the Islamification of Britain, with people degrading our values and our way of life, and say we're building a political movement. And then that, like 2 days after that, Farage comes and announces, oh, okay, I am running after all. I will. He wants to get ahead of this movement. He wants to own it, claim it. And this is what he does. He does it every single time. But the problem is, in that instance, he didn't tell anyone either. He didn't tell anyone within his party. No one knew. He called a press meeting, had a statement, said, I am now taking over the party. But he can do that because he is the majority shareholder in what's not a party. It's a company, a limited company. And so he just pushed Richard Tice aside. Again, Richard Tice doesn't care. He's fine because he's in Parliament. He's happy with this. He wants to be part of the establishment.
Yeah, and in fairness to Richard Tice, he knew that they needed Nigel back in order to have that electoral success. I guess the counter-argument, Calvin, is that the last days of UKIP were messy. And Nigel and Richard believe that they learned lots of lessons from that about the best way to run a political party. And while I know it upsets many folk, the media, the mainstream media, is after them for the most ridiculous things. And so I guess Richard and Nigel are taking an approach of, well, we're not taking any risks. We're going to be whiter than white.
They are, but to their own detriment, because some of the lessons they should have learned from UKIP, and they did mess up. Nigel Farage massively messed up UKIP. UKIP is still recovering from the mess that he left behind. But one of the lessons he's taken away is that he doesn't want to have to answer to anyone. There's no accountability. He doesn't want to have to consult, doesn't want to have to listen to members. He just wants to make all the decisions. And now he has a party structure, a company structure, where he can do that.
Let me tell you, what's so important about being independent is I'm only going to tell you about products that I use and believe in. So I'm so excited about Verso. As soon as I entered my 40s, becoming healthy and staying healthy was really critical for me, and I wanted to prioritize my health. So I started the 16-8 fast. However, scientists like David Sinclair have actually proven that we can now reverse aging with interventions that go beyond healthy habits. So I wanted a product that would enhance everything I was already doing, but it had to be backed up by solid evidence. So I have to tell you about Cellbean by Verso. I've been taking it for 2 months now. It is scientifically proven to fight the effects of aging by increasing NAD+ levels. And my goodness, it's genuinely been transformative for me. Fasting so much easier. I've lost fat, I've lost weight, I'm eating less too. The team at Verso tell me it's due to its blood sugar regulating effects, which lead to fewer cravings, but I'm also sleeping better, feeling happier. It has taken years off me. And what's great is Verso publishes third-party testing from each batch produced to guarantee you are getting what you're paid for. And to mark the first week of Outspoken, our brilliant first sponsor Verso is giving you an incredible offer. If you head right now to buy.ver.so/outspoken, you will save 15% on your first order. And all you need to do is use the coupon code Outspoken. I'm going to pop that, by the way, in our YouTube and Rumble description. I've already heard from some of you who say the delivery comes really fast too. So that's good news. It's buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code Outspoken.
But you are right. He is being attacked by the media, and he will continue to be attacked by the media. But one thing you and I know is you can never feed the crocodile. And this is what he's doing. He's trying to play the left at their game. By installing a Mohammedan as the chairman of the party, he's saying, look, we're not anti-Islam, we're not racist, we're not ex-white, look at us, look, we've got a brown friend. Essentially, it's that old trope, isn't it? I'm not racist, some of my best friends are black. This is essentially what Nigel Farage is trying to do. You can't play that game. You've got to rise above that game because they will defeat you in another way.
Okay, so let's move on to Zia Youssef, because we disagree on this guy. Your take is what? That because he is not Christian, he can't properly represent the values that Reform UK should be standing up for?
Somewhat, but also not just because he's not Christian, but because he is a Mohammedan. He is a follower of Muhammad, and I truly believe
so he's
that
Muslim.
Islam is a word that I won't use because it means a true believer of God, and I don't believe they are true believers of God. But Islam is an anti-Christian and anti-British faith. It's a faith of conquering. It's a faith of taking over, dominating lands, and either reverting, as they call it, converting, or killing infidels. And we are the infidels. The Christians, the native Brits are the infidels. And so people say, yeah, he's a moderate, though he's not an Islamist. But if he follows the faith, which teaches you are to conquer and kill, then he follows the faith. And I think we have to address the problem in Islam in this country. There are so many problems with it. Of course, Pakistani Muslim raping gangs, groom gangs, whatever you want to call them, are part of that problem, but not the whole of the problem. Essentially, this country is facing a cultural identity crisis where we have to say, do we want to remain a fundamentally Christian country where people can either be Christian or not Christian, worship whatever God they choose, or do we want to become an Islamic country, which we very well may be? And if we become a predominantly Islamic country, we will not have the freedom of worship that we have known and loved up until this point, because no country that's predominantly Islamic has true freedom of worship in the way that we have successfully held to in Britain. And I think having him as the party leader shows that they are not willing to challenge. They didn't mention grooming gangs once. They haven't mentioned these things, and it's becoming clear why, because he is the man paying the money. He's the money man behind the party, and so therefore they're compromised actually.
Although there's absolutely no sense from what I've seen of Zia Yusuf that he's anything other than an incredible patriot. And I wanted to play you this moment, Calvin, where he, I think, summed up why he is such an exciting orator and actually could be. I view him, Calvin, a bit like the Jordan Bardella figure to Marine Le Pen. He is a potential successor to Farage and someone who could take the party even more to the mainstream. So this is what he had to say about British history and slavery at that rally in Birmingham just before the election.
Not only did Britain invent the common law principles that gave birth to the United States, to Canada, to Australia, that does not begin to tell the story of just how much Britain has done to make the world a better, freer place. Great Britain was the first global power to abolish the slave trade, all the way back in 1807, when our Parliament passed the Slave Trade Act. Upon passing this law, Britain formed a new Royal Navy squadron, the West Africa Squadron. We dispatched it to patrol the high seas and enforce this ban on the slave trade. His Majesty's Royal Navy, the mightiest navy the world had ever seen, faced down the slave ships and forced them to comply.
I mean, come on, Calvin. You're inspired by that, right? It could be you. That could be you.
He could be reading one of my speeches. Absolutely. We agree on a lot of things, but it's about priorities, right? And we're seeing a massive call of people in this country. We've got 5 Islamists that are being elected into parliament. A massive call of people in this country that want Sharia, want Islamic law in this land. My question is, where do his loyalties lie? Yes, he may see our past as great. He may talk about British values as a good thing, but is he an is he a Mohammedan first, or is he a Brit first?
But can't we have that discussion with him, Calvin? Because wouldn't it be really unwise to try and turn off good Muslims and say you're not welcome in Reform UK? Don't they almost have to be part of the movement if we're going to save this country?
I would love for him to be welcome as part of Reform. I welcome anyone as part of any political party. My problem is that he's the chairman. He's heading up. You said yourself, they're lining him up to be the next leader. If the leader of the centre-right party in this country is going to be a Mohammedan, then where are we? Where are the people that are concerned about Islam as one of the greatest threats facing our country? It's a problem. I can't vote for Reform with him as the chairman. I had to hold my nose to vote for Reform in the last election anyway, but I voted based on my local candidates. I will not be voting for them again while he's in the leadership.
Wow.
And this is a problem.
And that is a problem. That is a problem, because the right has to be united to win. Because I believe Reform UK can win in 2029. I was saying weeks before the election, I think Nigel Farage has a really good chance and actually can be Prime Minister in 2029, but it is critical that the right is united. And I am worried about what's happened with Ben Habib today. He's a good man, and I don't think he deserved to be thrown under the bus. And I think it could have just been done a lot more artfully. But look, Calvin, the MSM continue to try and attack Reform UK, now claiming that Reform UK voters are conspiracy theorists. Watch this ridiculous investigation from the awful Sly News.
Particularly for conspiracy theorists and nationalist groups. Now, we worked with an open source intelligence agency called PROS to monitor more than 900 Telegram accounts connected to conspiracy theories. Between them, they have more than 15 million followers, although some of those may be double counted. Now, this shows the volume of chatter around the start of the general election. You can see this is around Labour and Conservatives, a big spike here when it's announced, but it's fairly, they're not that interested as it happens. But then something else happens, and we bring in Reform. In particular, you can see that in the light blue, their colours, this huge spike. This huge spike is when this man over here, Nigel Farage, announces that he is going to be a candidate who returns as leader of Reform. Now, some people saw this as an opportunity to recruit, as in this group. They've mimicked the Reform banners there. And then you've got other things like this. Whether it's Dems or Nons, we'll still be posting about Q, which is a conspiracy theory, and tying it all into Reform UK anyway. So they're trying to get...
What do you make of that, Calvin?
That's hilarious, isn't it? How sad are Sly News? This investigation to anonymous accounts online. I'm sure they did an investigation into people that are voting for Labour and people that vote for the Conservative Party too. I'm sure they did. We just
what about all the Islamic extremists within the Green Party, Calvin? We're just ignoring them now, aren't we?
Exactly. They don't care. What this is clearly an attack on the centre right. They hate the centre right. They hate the right. Anything right of Marx, they hate. And it's becoming very clear that the media is very much part of the establishment. Gone are the days when the mainstream media used to hold the establishment to account. These days, they are a part of it. They're in that circle, and they want to protect what is theirs. It's a great shame because they should be doing a good job. Sly News used to do a good job when they were called Sky News, but these days, not so much.
Indeed. And the conspiracy theorist term, Calvin, it's dead. I refuse to use it anymore. Actually, I don't necessarily agree with everything that is described as a conspiracy theory, but I want to hear about it. I want to be awake to it. I want to do my own research. And I'm talking about loads of conspiracy theories, whether it's 9/11 or whether it's the theory that Brigitte Macron is a woman, is actually a man, not a woman. I want to hear about it. I want to look into it because we have been lied to so much. As I say, it doesn't mean I believe these theories, but I'm not going to call the people who propagate them conspiracists.
And also, we've reached a point where you can't ask questions anymore. So I put out a tweet the other day saying, I want to know about chemtrails. I want to know what they are, if they exist.
Me too.
And people said, "Oh, there's no such thing as chemtrails. They're contrails." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. This is why I'm asking the question." And people tried to shut me down. Put your tinfoil hat on. Oh my gosh, Calvin, don't go down that path. Like, well, why? What's down that path? I want to know what's down the path. Maybe there's nothing. Maybe it's all made up. Or maybe there is something going on in our skies that's affecting us in some way, whether it's geoengineering or whatever. Yeah. But if there is, I would like to know.
Absolutely, because the point is, Calvin, we cannot just trust now what we are fed by officials, what we are fed by the woke blob, and what we are fed by the MSM. Because do you remember Jacinda Ardern's Ministry of Truth during COVID-19? Well, it was the Ministry of Lies, and it caused absolute catastrophe for so many people. Calvin, look, breaking right now, bit of news while we've been on air. Another departure at Reform UK. Dr. David Bull, who was the Deputy Leader, has just tweeted, "I'm delighted to hand over the role of Deputy Leader to my friend and colleague Richard Tice, who will do an amazing job. I'm now going to concentrate on my media career while giving the party all the support I can." And he is returning to his job as a presenter on Talk TV. So, big shake-up going on. What's your reaction to David Bull?
David Bull, nice guy, but again, not someone I would want to vote for. I remember David Bull and Richard Tice quite heavily in favour of vaccine mandates, and you and I were campaigning heavily against it at the time. I think it was an unwise decision for him to make, but again, he's a nice guy to get on with, so it's a shame that he's been pushed out and edged out in this way. This is another reason I want to see more of a party structure at Reform and less of a corporation structure. Let's get some democracy internally, please.
But Calvin, as I say, it's way more dirty and way more nasty within the Conservative Party. What do you make of Kemi Badenoch suggesting that Suella Braverman is having a public nervous breakdown simply because she's putting out Conservative principles into the world?
Oh, I struggle. I have to laugh because otherwise it's quite sad, because the Conservative Party has naturally been the party of government, and they've lost that. Yet they still hold on to a sense of entitlement. They still feel, many of them still feel like they should be in government. They haven't quite realised why we, the voters, got rid of them yet. And I won't name any names, but people have been saying, "Oh, we need to lurch to the centre. It's the centre ground where we win elections." But one person hasn't. One MP has said, no, we need to call a spade, and that's Suella Braverman. And she has been saying, she was in MatCon this week, put out really good speech, just calling a spade, and people have attacked her in the party, in her own party, saying, "Oh, you're going too far. This is strong rhetoric," and even going so far as to say she may be having a very public mental breakdown, which I think is a very unkind thing to say, privately or publicly, if it's not true. But what it shows is there's a massive denial within the party, but also a fight for the leadership. And what I like about Suella is she's gone all in. Right, so this is clearly a political move. She's saying, I'm going to go fully Conservative, and then if they back me, great. If I become leader, great. I'll take the party to the next election and we'll have a shot of winning. But if they don't back me, then I'll go to Reform. I think that's essentially what Suella is showing, that I think if the party don't elect her as leader, she will leave the party and potentially end up in the Reform Party and therefore be able to be fully Conservative. But I don't think she's going to get the backing. I really don't. There are too many wets.
I agree. I completely agree. But I think it could be the end of the party, Calvin. Yeah. And I know that sounds dramatic, but think about this. New polling out from JL Partners for GB News last night found that Braverman would beat each of her potential opponents in the final two contests put to Conservative members. She beats Badenoch 35% to 31%, Tom Tugendhat 37 to 31%, James Cleverly 39 to 34%, Robert Jenrick, who the Wets sort of view as an acceptable right-winger, wouldn't beat any of them. But look, I don't even believe that it's that close. Calvin, I honestly believe if Suella Braverman is on the final ballot of Conservative members, she will walk it. So as a result, the MPs will not allow her to be on that final ballot.
She would, and we've been here before. The reason that we had Rishi Sunak as the Prime Minister is because the blob wanted him so badly. And this is why they denied the membership of vote on Suella and or Kemi at the time, actually. And the right of the party, if you remember, was split between Kemi and Suella. And I was helping one of them at the time, trying to build their team. And I remember talking to people internally. So there's certain groups within the Tory party, the Common Sense group, the European Reform group, and all these different groups. And some of them were saying, look, we cannot back Kemi Badenoch because she's supported by Michael Gove and he is Machiavellian. We don't trust him. We don't like what he's doing. And then others were saying, well, we're backing Suella. Why do you get Kemi to join Suella? And then others were saying, well, get Suella to join Kemi. And eventually, anyway, the right splintered. And what we ended up with was Liz Truss versus Rishi Sunak, because the blob thought, well, of course we'll beat Liz Truss, of course we will. But they didn't, because the party membership did not want Rishi Sunak like the parliamentary party did. And of course, we selected Liz Truss as party leader. I was fortunate enough to vote for her as party leader. But of course, the blob did not want her because they wanted Rishi, so they got rid of her. So we've been here before. The party membership will not get to vote on the candidate that they would like because the parliamentary party is entitled. They do not understand. They're disconnected from the British public as well as the party membership. And they will maneuver to get the chap or chapess that they want in. So I don't think Suella has a chance of even getting onto the ballot paper for the membership vote, unfortunately. But hopefully, they'll at least drag this process out to conference so that I won't get a vote because I've been expelled, obviously, but members will get a vote or get a conversation at conference.
Calvin, I had to ask you about this. Final word today on the Daily Mail, well and truly going woke. What has happened to my old newspaper? Well, I did see the signs, actually. So look at this article that they released about a Bachelorette contestant. I'd never heard of him, called Josh Sita. And he seems to have slapped some lippy on. And see there, Calvin, they say, she looks so beautiful. Clearly they're being ridiculed, right. But the Daily Mail's gone woke, hasn't it? The Daily Mail's gone woke.
It has, unfortunately. I thought this chap was just having I thought he was mocking. I thought he was a troll. But it looks like the Daily Mail have taken him seriously. But this is not the first time. Was it last week or the week before? They said Oh, Eddie Izzard shows off her toned legs in a pair of tiny denim shorts as she hops on a Boris bike in London. It's like, no, Eddie Izzard is a bloke, and he's not that toned either. Why they wouldn't do that about a woman? Why are they doing it about a man? It's I don't know what's happened.
Well, they tried to get me to call Sam Smith they, and I just didn't believe in that. So I guess there was the sign that this was coming. By the way, can we just have a quick look at that picture again? Because I don't know if I should be flattered or not, Calvin, but some people say it looks a bit like me if I were to if I was to wear some lippy. But honestly, look, this guy's a joker. This Josh Seater's a joker. I reckon this is probably, he's seen what Dylan Mulvaney did, and he's thought, I can become famous on the back of doing this. It's a publicity stunt, and shame on the Daily Mail for denigrating real women by describing that guy as a she.
Absolutely. You know what they did recently at the big rally I was talking about on June the 1st? The Daily Mail called all the supporters there Tommy Robinson football hooligans, even though
I saw that. That was outrageous.
The Daily Mail should be on our side. What are they doing?
Yeah, well, I think they're lost. Honestly, I think they're lost now. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please do subscribe if you want lots more clips and interviews like that. Plus, if you want to watch our totally uncensored after show, then visit www.outspoken.live.